Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of To The Point podcast. So we are all doing well on this Monday following a weekend in sports where, the NFL is alive and well, so to speak, but the rest of the sporting world's really taken a hit. There's all conversations lead back to COVID, unfortunately. 21 months into this pandemic. And I don't want to start the show talking about COVID necessarily, because I think it's a topic that's very divisive. Again, I have my opinions on it. I think I have a solution for these sports leagues. And I don't think you'll hear Sportsnet or TSN bring up this idea. That maybe we'll hear it. Kudos to them. But this is what I think should happen. I'll talk about that on today's show for all these sports leagues. And, with, some postponements in the NFL, we have 2 games this evening, 2 games tomorrow. I won't complain about that because there's hardly any hockey, and basketball games continue to fall by the wayside. So as we're approaching Christmas, it's really, it's not a merry time of year right now. It's very doom and gloom in the sports world. But this weekend had a lot of intrigue, less games than usual because we have 2 tonight, 2 tomorrow, and 1 on Saturday. But I think the top story at this hour is a lot of teams staying alive in the playoff hunt. For me, anyway, it would be the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Tennessee Titans, the New Orleans Saints defeating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's the Arizona Cardinals. Detroit's not staying in the playoff mix, but teams have stayed in there. Cincinnati getting the division lead. So as we approach the final 3 weeks of the NFL season, it is still very much up in the air who's going to make the playoffs, who's going to win division titles, and the intrigue still remains in its place. But, Cowboys trounced the Giants. No surprise there. Bills crushed the Panthers. Okay, no surprise there. That should happen. Jets nearly beating the Dolphins. I thought the Jets, in my confidence pool, I had the Jets to win yesterday. They didn't, but I thought they would because the Dolphins coming off a bye win streak, but they survive it. They're now 7-7. They remain in the playoff hunt. But I look at the Saints Buccaneers game, and the spread was 11.5. And in my head, I'm saying the Saints could cover the spread, but no way in hell did I think the New Orleans Saints would outright win the game. Not just outright win the game, defeat the reigning Super Bowl champions on the road and not allow a point, but also defeat the reigning Super Bowl champions when the New Orleans Saints offense did not score a single touchdown. That's what happened last night on Sunday Night Football. And it was a game where I don't know if I've seen Tom Brady more frustrated in the last 5 years. The whole Chicago Bears game last year where he hung up 4 or 5 fingers. That I didn't see him as puzzled as he was last night. And this wasn't because of a head injury. This wasn't because of an injury to himself. During the game, he lost Chris Godwin. He lost Mike Evans. He lost Leonard Fournette. But in the first half, Tom Brady put up 0 points. So pointing to the wide receivers last night, the Tom Brady superfans will do that. The realists, like myself, will say he got outplayed. And I look at the game and I say, wow. And there's the alarm bells about the Bucs. I'm not as concerned about them. But what I will say is I'm really starting to think, and I'm trying to ponder, was there a blueprint to defeat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And, in particular, that Buccaneers offense last night Or do the Saints just have a bunch of ballers? And the answer to that is a little bit of both. And you look at that Saints defense. Demario Davis is a Pro Bowler. You could argue an All-Pro. Cam Jordan has made it to 6 consecutive Pro Bowls. The way he's playing, he's played over his career, you could make an argument he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's going to Canton. You got CJ Gardner-Johnson, who just shows up every week and makes plays in the back end. Marshawn Lattimore, who is a great cornerback, rarely gets talked about because he was the pick after Patrick Mahomes. But he's a great slot corner. Marcus Williams as the safety, since that disastrous Minnesota Miracle play, he's made Pro Bowls. He's an elite player. Marcus Davenport, another first-round pick that's hit for the New Orleans Saints. But you saw last night, why did they win the game? Well, something I pointed out about the Bucs for a number of weeks is they don't run the ball. And, you know, I think BA, Bruce Arians, and Tom Brady, and they feel confident that they can throw the ball 45 to 50 times a game and win. And to their credit, they have most times this year. They're 10-4. It's a very good record. However, there have been games where they don't run the football and they lose, including to the Saints in week 7. So to me, that's one of the biggest issues I have with this team. Their defense hasn't been as good as it was last year, but we've seen signs of it starting to come around. Levante David, the middle linebacker, had a phenomenal game last night. And I can make the argument, if Cam Jordan wasn't playing this week, Levante David would be NFC Defensive Player of the Week. He was that good. You know, Shaq Barrett started to shine a little bit. I mean, they allowed 9 points last night. That's 3 field goals. Did not allow a touchdown in the game. They played a solid game against the Bills, in particular in the first half. But so the Bucs have their weaknesses. Leonard Fournette's a good back, but this offensive line, I think sometimes it's just about practice reps. It's about walkthrough. And I look at it and say, when are they practicing the run? Because it is not in their game plan to run the football. But I look at teams they could possibly play. Well, the Green Bay Packers didn't have a great day defensively yesterday, and I'll talk about them in a minute. But they're still without Jair Alexander, their best corner. They're still without Zadarius Smith, their best pass rusher. Their offensive line is battered. So they're not exactly at full strength, if that's the argument. But they do have good players on that defense. That could potentially cause them some problems. I don't think it's as good as New Orleans, but New Orleans doesn't have number 12 at quarterback either. And I'm not talking about Tom Brady in this instance. Then I go to a team like the Dallas Cowboys. And Dallas is kind of the polar opposite of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that, excuse me, Dallas has a defense that I consider elite to very good. They have special players. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Randy Gregory, Trayvon Diggs. These guys make big plays. And like the Saints, I just pointed out 3 to 4 names. You need those guys that jump off the page, that make big plays in big games. Well, we've seen that from these Cowboys all year long. And contrasting them to the Bucs, who have a great offense week after week, excluding last night, the Cowboys offense, since Dak's calf injury, since that New England game where they walked it off, it has been very pedestrian. They're averaging 22 points a game. That's not good. Dak Prescott looks out of sorts. He's missing wide open throws. He looks a little timid in the pocket. Their running game is not as dynamic as it once was. I'm looking at a guy like Tyron Smith, the left tackle, who is going to go to Cooperstown, but he's getting beat by pass rushers. He's getting holding calls. That was foreign. He was the best left tackle in football forever, but he's had a ton of neck injuries. He's had multiple surgeries, and he's starting to get a little beat up. Zach Martin isn't playing as good as he once did. So the Cowboys, although they have elite talent at the wide receiver position, with Amari Cooper, with Michael Gallup, with CeeDee Lamb, they struggle to put it all together. So I think the Cowboys could be a dangerous matchup for the Buccaneers because they have guys that make plays. The Saints knew Tampa Bay was going to drop back and pass a lot and throw the ball last night. So what did they do? We got Cam Jordan, we got Ominata, we got Marcus Davenport. We're going to beat you. What did they do? 3 sacks, 4 sacks on Tom Brady, 3 by Cam Jordan, and a forced fumble. He didn't have time. And when he did have time, they locked people up. I don't like the Cowboys defense as much when it comes to their safeties and the back end of their defense. But that front 4 can rival New Orleans when it comes to production, when it comes to winning the pass block win rate section of the game. So that could be a troubling matchup. The Rams. When the Rams put it together with guys like Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Von Miller, this team can beat anybody. Literally anybody with that defense and with the offense clicking. The Rams have already beaten the Bucs this year. Now, the Rams haven't had as much success in the playoffs as a guy like Tom Brady, but it's about the style. How do you match up against this team? That could get interesting down the stretch here. But again, I still trust in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady had a bad game last night. He threw a temper tantrum when he threw the iPad because he couldn't complete a pass. He only threw for 212 yards, and he threw an interception. He stunk it up. Just be honest. Doesn't change the fact that he's the greatest quarterback ever. Well, I think Joe Montana is, but he's right up there. Doesn't change the fact that he's on a really good team. I said they'll win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to back off it because they lost to New Orleans last night. That's not the way I roll here. One thing I do think that it changed, however, and this is not a topic I love to get into, but we got 3 weeks left following Tuesday's games. So it's appropriate to talk about the MVP. And to me, going into last night, Tom Brady was the favorite. Tom Brady was the 44-year-old who, everybody's doubted. Max Kellerman of the mothership said he's going to fall off a cliff. And he's in Tampa, and they're throwing the ball a ton, maybe to stat pad. Who knows? He's breaking every record. Well, if you look at this week for Tom Brady, it was bad. He's had some bad games this year. He's had some stinkers. I mean, no touchdown. He got skunked last night. Skunked at home. Yikes. Well, who had a good week this week? Well, Aaron Rodgers had a pretty decent week. Now, I don't think that team particularly played that well. And, he could have some throws that I'd want back, to be honest with you. But did they win their game? Yeah. Are they first in the NFC? Yeah. And yesterday he goes for 268, 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdown passes for Aaron Rodgers, 3 different receivers. He had a pretty good day for Aaron Rodgers. So he's right up there. Even though, like I said to Adam this on Saturday, I don't think he'll be awarded, he'll win the award because of the whole COVID situation. And whether people agree with that or not, I'm not saying I agree with it or I don't. I'm just saying that's how I think voters will approach it. To me, the MVP right now is Jonathan Taylor. And do I think Jonathan Taylor is going to win it? No, because he's a running back. And it's stupid because to me, Jonathan Taylor is as important to the Indianapolis Colts as Tom Brady is to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. he's just as important, because if it's just a run-of-the-mill running back, if it's Leonard Fournette in Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Colts are not making the playoffs. They need to run the football. Carson Wentz throwing the ball 40 times a game is a recipe for failure. However, with the roster the way it is, with a solid defense with a future Hall of Famer in Darius Leonard, and a stud in DeForest Buckner who just wrecks defenses, and a really good offensive line, well, you have all the pieces around you. Michael Pittman Jr., T.Y. Hilton, you got Jack Doyle, you got a good team. But if Carson Wentz threw 40 times a game, they wouldn't win. We saw him do it against the Bucs. What happened in that game? They lost. So you look at Saturday's game, Colts hosting the Patriots. Jonathan Taylor ran 29 times for $170 and 1 touchdown. He had a 67-yard touchdown with 2 minutes and 12 seconds left, but that's how they won this game. Carson Wentz threw the ball 12 times in a dome. This wasn't Mac Jones in Buffalo where it had wind out the wazoo. He went 5 for 12, 57 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And that interception put New England back in the game, and they were down 3 late. They were down 3 late. When the game, it was 20-0. It should have been over. But Mac Jones made a few plays, even though he stunk it up on Saturday night. He threw a couple touchdown passes to Hunter Henry. He made they didn't run the ball effectively at all. They only ran the ball 18 times, which is a recipe for disaster for New England. They get down that much. And I said this Saturday. The Colts to me are they can be a problem for teams because they have the ingredients. Is their quarterback elite? No, but they're like the Patriots. The Patriots have a rookie quarterback who doesn't have a noodle arm, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not Tom Brady. He does the basic things. He can find the open receiver, but is he going to change to me, if you're down more than 10 points, you're not going to win the game with Mac Jones. If you're down more than 10 points, you're not going to win the game with Carson Wentz. So they're very similar. They both have good running backs. Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris are good backs. Solid tight end play with Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox. You got Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith in New England. Receivers aren't elite, but they're good. Pittman Jr., Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne. So they're similar teams, and I found it interesting. Indianapolis gets the win. They're now 8-6, and I think they can make it interesting in the playoffs because I believe they have the Cardinals this week who lost to the Detroit Lions. That should just be outlawed for them. You should have to really pay a toll or something to lose to them at this point of the season. But they go to Arizona. You can beat Arizona. It's not a gimme, but I think they can win that game. Then the Colts host the Raiders. The Raiders they're playing this evening, but they're a mess. And they finish with the Jaguars. To me, the Colts are going to make the playoffs in the AFC. Right now, they're the 5th seed, tied with the Chargers and the Buffalo Bills. You also have Baltimore at 8-6. So a lot of teams are still in the hunt there, but I like Indy's schedule. If you look at Buffalo, they have New England this weekend. Baltimore goes to Cincinnati. So it's not easy for any of these teams, but I like their path a little bit more. But to me, Jonathan Taylor is the MVP because he hasn't really had a bad week. He's leading the NFL in rushing by more than 500 yards. He's a touchdown machine. It's not just, he's a speed guy, but he can also run you over. And without Derrick Henry, he's clearly the best back in football. They're in the same division, oddly enough. But I look at New England. They were coming off a bye, as were the Colts. But they had 18 yards of offense in the first quarter. They gave up 3 points, but then they had a block punt for a touchdown. That never happens to New England, especially off a bye. You think you'd be ready to go. And this was one point where I look at a Bill Belichick team where Frank Reich's team was ready to play from the jump. They're up 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. They're up 20-0 by halftime. The game's over. They cut it to 3 because Carson Wentz really wanted New England to get back in the game, wanted them to win it, but Jonathan Taylor shut the proverbial storybook with that 67-yard touchdown drive. But again, I think the Colts can be a factor in the playoffs. I like their defense. I like their running game. I think they're the best running back in football. And with Tennessee losing to the Steelers, they lost both games this year, so it's unlikely that they'll get back in the divisional race. But, they're only a game back. They need Tennessee to lose twice down the stretch. Tennessee, you'll see what they have. They have the 49ers at home on Thursday. It's no gimme. 49ers are playing really, really well. Then the Titans host the Dolphins. Who knows? And they finish with the Houston Texans. So it's not the most difficult schedule, but it's also not a gimme schedule for a team that's not exactly look like world beaters this season in the Tennessee Titans. So see what happens there. But I think Jonathan Taylor, I think the Indianapolis Colts can be a factor come playoff time. Now, I forgot to mention this off the top. This is some breaking news today, and just before we went live. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lost in the game last night. They lost Mike Evans in the second quarter. They lost Chris Godwin in the second quarter, and they lost Leonard Fournette in the third quarter. And they all left the game, did not return. It was said earlier today that Chris Godwin was going to miss the rest of the regular season with a MCL injury. Well, we just found out that it was not an MCL injury, and it's worse than they actually think. He tore his ACL. So Chris Godwin, the leading receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think Tom Brady's most reliable receiver, is out for the remainder of the season. He had 98 receptions on the year. Fantastic. He had 1,103 receiving yards, which is 5th in the NFL, behind only Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, and Cooper Kupp. So a pretty elite group there. And just a tough blow. Mike Evans should be okay. They say Leonard Fournette will be back, but losing him for the season is a big blow because now you look at it. Okay, they got Mike Evans. Hopefully he's healthy. He's an elite guy. He's more of an end zone guy for Brady. He's not exactly, down in, down out that he throws it to him, but he's great. He's a Pro Bowler. Gronk had a rough night last night. He dropped about 3 passes, but normally he's sure-handed. He'll bounce back. He will. But you look, after that, Scotty Miller is a deep threat. He's in for a couple plays a game. You can't have him out there every play. Darden's a special teamer, same type of player as Scotty Miller. Tyler Johnson, I don't see a connection there. So we got to hope for the Bucs, I think, is that Rashad Perriman, who had the game-winning play against the Bills, can come back off the COVID list and play some meaningful football for you. Make some plays. Because I look around the lineup and I don't see a guy that Tom Brady's going to trust more than he trusts Rashad Perriman at this point, which is strange to say because Perriman's been on Baltimore. He's been on Detroit. He's bounced around. He was on New England briefly. He's played on a lot of different teams, but it looks like Brady has a little bit of a connection with him, and that might be the ticket for Tampa Bay to have some long-term success because Chris Godwin's going out is a big blow. But it's something they can manage. I think they can manage it. Antonio Brown is coming back after being suspended for lying about his vaccination status. So we'll see where that goes. But I do think that Tampa Bay will be okay when it comes to their pass game and receiving targets. The NFC, I mentioned the Packers off the top. Aaron Rodgers, another pretty solid game for him. Finding guys open. But the Baltimore did make it tough late. They made some good plays, and really the bigger story from that game was not how it ended, because I agreed with the play. We'll go over that in a minute. But the bigger deal to me was the fact that Tyler Huntley, who was making his second career NFL start, looked a lot better in that Baltimore offense than Lamar Jackson has since about week 4. And if you listen to the podcast regularly, you know I'm a fan of Lamar Jackson. He's a guy that is a run-pass option. He's a dual threat. He's electric when he has the football. But Tyler Huntley, he's not Lamar Jackson, but he is very similar. And it's a smart way to run a team if you're Baltimore. You don't have a quarterback that like Joe Flacco behind Lamar Jackson. So if there's an injury, that your substitution is just he's standing around, you want to have somebody that has a similar skill set so that he can jump into the offense and you don't really miss a beat. Well, I think we saw that yesterday from Tyler Huntley. The kid's making a second career start. You're in the game, and you look at the start. They had a 7-minute drive to start. Mark Andrews had a 38-yard reception. He continues to play like an all-pro. But they get to fourth. They go on 4th and goal on the first drive, and they miss. But then, they get a stop on Aaron Rodgers, 3-and-out. He missed a deep ball to Davante Adams. And he leads another good drive, and he finds Mark Andrews at the back of the end zone. Mark Andrews is playing at a Pro Bowl level. He's been the best tight end in the AFC by far. I think he'll be the all-pro and not Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's just started to come on now. But, then you have Aaron Rodgers come on, of course. He's finding guys, making some passes, you see guys coming from him, but he knows he needs to get the ball in that split second. He does it. Finds a tight end down the rail, making some solid reads. That's just Aaron Rodgers. He's one of the best to ever do it. But what do we see in the fourth quarter? You saw him make some really smart decisions. You saw Tyler Huntley lead a long drive over 7 minutes. Then Baltimore gets a 3-and-out on a big sack by Azabiki. And Huntley ends up running in a touchdown with about 39 seconds left. So, with 39 seconds left, they have one timeout left. They're down. If they kick the extra point, they tie it at 31. But John Harbaugh, like he did 2 weeks ago against the Pittsburgh Steelers, says, we're going to play to win the game here. We're not going to play not to lose. We're going to play to win. He says, we're going for 2, even with not Lamar Jackson, it's Tyler Huntley this time. And they run a similar play where last time Mark Andrews was lined up in the fullback position. They had Latavius Murray in the backfield, or Devontae Freeman in the backfield, Mark Andrews off to his right. This time, Mark Andrews was Eric Stokes versus Mark Andrews on the outside, one-on-one. And Tyler Huntley, he didn't make a lot of mistakes yesterday. This was one of them. Andrews ran a good route. Eric Stokes played it very well defensively, the first-round corner out of Georgia. But Huntley just threw it behind Andrews and went through the arms of Stokes. Should have been an interception, but it didn't matter. That was an incompletion. They couldn't recover the onside kick, and the Packers end up sneaking away with a 31-30 victory on the road. But, Brandon Staley got criticized Thursday night for going for it too often on 4th down. And John Harbaugh, you're going to hear it, that he made the wrong decision going for it on 4th and goal in the first quarter. He made a mistake going for the 2-point conversion yesterday. Well, all I know is in overtime, if the Green Bay wins that toss, they're winning the game. Aaron Rodgers is driving that ball down the field. He'll throw it to Davante Adams every time. And I trust him to win that game. And I think John Harbaugh said, okay, I'm not playing against Carson Wentz here. I'm not going up against Joe Flacco as the opposing quarterback. I got Aaron Rodgers, who tied Brett Favre in the game with his 442nd passing touchdown as a Packer, which ties the all-time record. I'm playing against this guy. We shouldn't be in this game. We don't have any corners. Marcus Peters. I got to play Averett out here. Marcus Peters is out. My all-pro Marlon Humphrey is out. LJ Fort, Chuck Clark's on the COVID list. We have no secondary, but yet we're down by a point with 29 seconds remaining. Let's win this bleeping ball game. And I will never criticize a coach for playing to win and playing not to lose. Now, of course, hindsight's 2020, but I agree with the decision, and it didn't work twice this year. You could make the argument, maybe change up the play call, but to Greg Roman's defense, to John Harbaugh's defense, Who does Baltimore have as a receiver that you trust to make that catch? Other than Mark Andrews, I trust no one on that team. Hollywood Brown's an electric player, but in those big moments, in those touchdown grabs, he has chicken for hands. He's went to Dixie Lee before the game. He is lathered in sauce, and he is not catching that ball. Rashad Bateman's a rookie. He doesn't have connection with either guy. You throw it to a running back, you have two old running backs that are not going to break a tackle on that play. It's Mark Andrews. It's Mark Andrews or bust. And the play could have worked. It was a poorly thrown ball. It was just Tyler Huntley had a great game and he made a mistake there. I mean, you look at him, he went 28 for 40, 215 passing, 2 touchdowns. He also ran the ball 13 times for 73 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He had an awesome day, but he went up against a better team and a better quarterback. And you could definitely make the argument he makes a better throw. He beats the better quarterback and he beats the better team in spectacular fashion. But me and Adam talked about this. The AFC North is a complete, it's not a shit show, but it's a complete mind fuck because Baltimore is battered to hell. And they're out of a playoff spot right now at the loss yesterday. They're behind Indy. They're behind the Bills. They're behind the Chargers. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs because they got Cincinnati left. They got the Steelers, and I believe they got the Rams. That's not an easy schedule. And Lamar Jackson is not healthy. So that's not easy. That's not an easy schedule for that team moving forward. But then you get Cincinnati. They go into Denver and win yesterday. Well, yeah, they win in Denver. But Denver, Teddy Bridgewater got hurt, but Teddy Bridgewater's played poorly for weeks. In comes Drew Lock, and Drew Lock did Drew Lock things. On a 4th down with 9 seconds left, he threw the ball 30 feet out of bounds. I don't know who he was aiming for, the mascot or a cute cheerleader. Clearly wasn't looking for Jerry Jeudy down the rope. Jerry Jeudy, a first-round pick wide receiver who didn't have a catch yesterday. Poor Jerry Jeudy. He was so good at Alabama. I still think he's pretty good. But he hasn't had a fucking quarterback since he got to the NFL. Drew Lock, Brett Rippon, Teddy Bridgewater. Come on, man. But Cincinnati, okay, you win 15-10. And I really like Joe Burrow. But that's it. Their offensive line stinks still. Joe Burrow's been sacked the most times in the NFL, 48. He also got sacked the most times in the NFL last year prior to his injury, where he tore his ACL, MCL, and LCL. They still haven't upgraded that. They might win this division with the worst offensive line of any team that makes the playoffs by a quarter mile. Look, they got the same record as the Chargers. The Chargers have Rashawn Slater, who is a rookie, but he might win Offensive Rookie of the Year. He might make a Pro Bowl as a rookie. He has Corey Linsley in front of him, who's a Pro Bowler. That's what he's got to deal with. Joe Burrow's got nobody. He's got no help at that offensive line. But Cincinnati wins. And the crazy thing, and I said this Saturday, I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers beat the Titans. And they did. The Steelers just stay, boom, the witch should be dead in Pittsburgh. This team shouldn't be winning. Big Ben played terrible yesterday. His offensive line is terrible. They don't block nothing. They are incompetent. They can't protect Ben, and they can't block to run the football. That means you stink. You stink. But how did they win this game, you might ask? And boy, what a game this was. So 9:16 left. At this point, the Steelers had 6 points off 2 Tennessee fumbles. So 6 points. But then you got 9:16 left. Alex Okorafor tips a pass at the line of scrimmage, intercepted by Joe Sherbert. That leads to 3 points. So that's 9 points off turnovers for the game. But they're not scoring touchdowns, but they are still getting points. So the 3 point drive. The next play, poor handoff between Tannehill and Devontae Foreman. Ball's on the ground, fumble, recovered by Pittsburgh, which leads to another 3 points. That's 12 points off turnovers, but no touchdowns. None. Four turnovers in the game only leads to 12 points. That's some really good defense from Tennessee, which they do have. And also, Pittsburgh on offense is 2 for 11 on third down. 2 for 11. But all that being said, Tennessee is completely screwing themselves. And yet, we're in the fourth quarter of the game. It's a couple minutes left, I might add. They're still only down by 6. They could go on a touchdown drive and win the game. But credit to the Steelers defense. They come up with 4 turnovers. Minka Fitzpatrick had a big game. Moonette, who just got inserted because of COVID protocols, balled out. And on a 4th down, 4th and 7, throws the ball to Westbrook Ikeen. Joe Hayden makes a great tackle. Stuffs him a yard short of the first down. That's the ball game. The Steelers had no business winning this game. Offensively, it was as inept of a performance as I've seen. Just to put this into perspective, the Steelers' offense looks pathetic. Detroit's offense yesterday looked unbelievable. Jared Goff looked like Big Ben in his prime. But yet, Detroit's got 2 wins. The Steelers have 7. And I think you make the argument, Detroit's got a way better offense. They got a better quarter. They got a better. The Steelers somehow win the game. So the NFC North, who's going to win it? I don't know. I really don't. I don't think Baltimore's making the playoffs. I went through their schedule earlier. It's tough. Cincinnati, they finished with Pittsburgh, and they got the Rams in between. I could see them losing all 3 games. Cincinnati needs to have a game offensively where they look good, but I could see Baltimore losing their last 3 games, no matter who's at quarterback to finish this season. You go to Cincinnati. They play Baltimore this week. They don't have an easy schedule either, but we're going to go through it. Cincinnati plays Baltimore. Then they host the Chiefs. That's a tough matchup the second last week of the season. They finish at the Browns. They got blown out against the Browns earlier this season. The Steelers, they go to Kansas City next week. Yikes. Then the Steelers go host the Browns in the final Monday Night Football game of the year. So no gimme. And they finish against at the Ravens. So they don't have an easy. It's all tough sledding. And then there's the X factor. The team playing today, the Cleveland Brownies. Well, and this is where we got to get into the COVID conversation. So the NFL came out Friday and said, the Cleveland Browns got way too many players on COVID protocol, and we can't have the game. We can't have the Eagles, Washington football team game. We can't have Rams, Seahawks. Okay. And their reasoning is there's too many players on the COVID list. Maybe by the time we get to these games, players will be eligible to come off. Totally fair. Sure. Yeah, totally fair. I'm being a little facetious here. But yeah, makes sense. Sure. I'm okay with the game coming up in about 55 minutes time. I'll watch it, 6 o'clock. What else am I going to watch? The news? Fuck no. So, but with that logic, they're saying, well, people will come off the COVID list. We'll have some players. Baker Mayfield Jr. the third will be playing, right? Well, we've gotten to Monday. And it is Monday. It's still Monday. Yeah, it's dark outside. It's still Monday. Yeah. Well, we're here. Monday, December 20th. Baker Mayfield, Case Keenum, number 1 and 2 quarterbacks on the depth chart, still are on the COVID list. They can't play tonight. So the logic behind pushing this game, the fact that the NFL would never admit this, but we don't want to see Nick Mullins, the former quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. We don't want to see Nick Mullins play on NFL Network on a Saturday against Derek Carr. We want to see Baker Mayfield or even Case Keenum. We want to see some defensive guys like Grant Delpit who are out. Well, they had one player come off the COVID list today. John Johnson III. Good safety. That's it. That's it. They pushed the game to Monday. And guys, and I credit KJ Wright, who had the balls to go on Twitter and bitch about them changing the game, which he had every right to, by the way. He complained about it. And he said, if this was us, there's no way the NFL would do this. And I actually agree with him because the Cleveland Browns get clicks. The Cleveland Browns get hype. And the Cleveland Browns playing on a solo stage before Monday Night Football, where tonight's Monday Night Football game is Vikings-Bears. That's going to be the talk of the town tomorrow. On shows like Get Up, First Take, Undisputed. What are they going to talk about? The Cleveland Brownies. But now there's no Baker. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And this is what has to happen for every pro sports league. And for the people that are, when you get COVID, you go to sit down for 14 days. This is probably a good time for you to sign off because you're not going to like what I have to say, but I'm going to say it because I believe it's just the truth. And I'll start off by saying, I'm not a physician. I'm not a doctor. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, although I don't think I'm stupid. But we are almost 2 years into this pandemic. We have gone through quarantines, we've gone through shutdowns, we've gone through bubbles, all this different, whatever you want to call it. And what we've learned is that, yes, it's serious, but at the same time, you got to move on with life. And people are going to get COVID, like athletes are going to get, we've seen it all sports. But to me, there's one solution to this problem. And here it is for me. Any player who tests positive for COVID-19, but is asymptomatic or has mild symptoms and has a booster shot and has his 2 needles in the arm, his 2 jabs, should be eligible to play. This is how you keep your league going. The health and safety people can bitch and complain about this, but this is how we have to move forward. The show must go on. And let's just get down to brass. This is about money, but it's also about entertainment. Canceling games pisses me off because what do? I come in here and talk about sports. What do I do every night? I watch sport. That's my life. Again, it sounds kind of pathetic, but that's what I do. And you can't just keep canceling games. You can't have players that should be able to play because they're not sick, but because some bleeping test says that they are COVID positive, to me, it's really simple. Okay, you want to make it a mandate, go get your booster? Great. And if you get it, we've been told forever, go get your vaccines, go get now your booster, and you're going to get rewarded for it. Well, people that are not, because, I was I was told this the other day and I was corrected. And I was glad I was by my parents saying they never said if you got your vaccine, you never get COVID. Fair enough. That was wrong on my part when I was talking to them and having a great conversation about it, because they are more old school and they are more timid than me, because I'm a reckless person. I'll fully admit that. But at the same time, if you get your vaccines, if you get your booster shot, and you get COVID and you have these same restrictions, if you have these same rules as the person that didn't, then what's the point of getting the vaccine in the first place? What's the point of getting the booster shot? And I'm sure that the counterpoint to that would be, well, you're not going to die. Well, okay. But I'm healthy. I work out. Like, to me, that's not the most prudent point that somebody can throw back at me, because that's in one ear. That's half the way down that's half a mile down the road. If you're going to do what the government says and do what doctors have said, people should be rewarded for that. And if you're going to shut down cities like New Brunswick might be shut down, you look at Ontario right now, people should be rewarded. And at least if you can't go to a bar, which I think or go to eat, which is ridiculous if you have the 2 shots and a booster, at least allow them to watch sports on television. And you can't do that right now. And athletes are going to get preferential treatment. I'm not going to stop. I don't care. Like I can sit home and watch sports for multiple weeks and with a shutdown. That won't kill me, as long as I have something on. If there's a shutdown and there's nothing again, that was one of the worst times of my life. It's so simple. Baker Mayfield should be starting tonight's game. He's got his booster and he's got 2 vaccines. Because he didn't pass his PCR test or whatever the bleep it is, eventually we just have to move forward. And that's just how simple it is to me. This is not 2 years ago. People that aren't going to get vaccinated, they just aren't. And if something bad happens to them, well, that's their choice. You get in a vehicle with a drunk driver, well, you're taking your life into your own hands. But when it comes to COVID, when it comes to how we move forward as a society, athletes in every sport, like hockey, it's like it's death right now because players have it. Well, to me, it's quite simple. Go get your booster shot and you can play games tomorrow. It shouldn't be these shutdowns and game after game. This cancel. I mean, you look at this week. Let's go through this because it's honestly staggering. Tonight, there's one game in the NHL. Wild Stars. Blue Jackets, Sabres, postponed. Canadiens, Islanders, postponed. Avalanche, Red Wings, postponed. Ducks, Oilers. Yeah, that's just tonight. Tomorrow, oh my fuck. 3 games. The Hurricanes, Bruins, postponed. Blues, Senators. Devils, Penguins. Jets, Preds. Panthers, Blackhawks, Ducks, Flames, Canucks, Sharks. I won't go through the whole week because I don't want to bore you with these really sad details. But do you think just these tests are going to stop? And honestly, I'm sure the NHL, because they're probably not going to take my advice. If they're not going to take my advice and do what I'm pitching, the best thing they can hope for is that every player gets it between now and Christmas. And that might sound really morbid, but it's the truth, because these athletes are not going to die from it. And they can hope every player gets it so that it's in their system, this Omicron, they get it, and then there's no problems down the stretch. That's the 2 options. But is every player going to get it? I haven't heard Connor McDavid has it yet. Sidney Crosby going to get it? Is Obi going to get it? Because maybe they'll get it down the stretch. There needs to be new rules put in place. And living in fear, living timidly. I always talk about John Harbaugh, about these coaches that I like. You play to win. You play not to. As a society, as government officials, I think government officials have been playing not to lose too damn much over the last 2 years. At first, okay, let's protect each other. But are we going to shut down? Are we doing this? Are we going? We got 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the door. That's the worst place you can be. Make a decision and live with it. But for the NHL, for the NBA, I mean, you look at the NBA, they have to be panicking right now. Because on Saturday, it's Christmas. The biggest day on the NBA calendar, and it's not even close to second, it's Christmas. They have 5 games that day. And they're huge. They do great ratings. They're on TNT and ABC / the mothership. And you got Nets Lakers at 9:00 Atlantic time, Saturday. Right now, Kevin Durant, James Harden are in COVID protocol. They would not be eligible to play. Brooklyn's game last night was postponed. Brooklyn's game Tuesday was postponed. So maybe guys come off the COVID list by then. What if it's not Kevin Durant? What if it's not James Harden? And you see Patty Mills out there with, I can't even name who, Dante Bembury and Nicholas Claxton for Brooklyn against LeBron and Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony. Imagine that is the primetime game for the NBA slot. We're starting to see it go through the Warriors locker room. They're playing the Suns on Christmas. Andrew Wiggins is in COVID protocol. You don't think Steph Curry might not get it between now and then? Excuse me, the Atlanta Hawks game. They got postponed last night. They're scheduled to play on Christmas at the Garden against the Knicks. It's a trickle down effect where it's just a disaster. And to make matters worse for a team like the Browns tonight, you got this game that's going to be really tough against the Raiders with Nick Mullins. I do think they can win it. Long odds though. And then you have to go play Saturday. So even a shorter week in Green Bay. It wasn't going to be easy anyway. Saturday to Saturday, but you play on a Monday now. You didn't get your players off the COVID list, and then you go to Green Bay, Wisconsin in the frozen tundra. This doesn't seem fair. And we want to talk about fairness. We want to talk about, we're going to push the game back for the integrity of it. Okay. That's what you want to tell me. Sure. But this is going to keep happening, and there's going to be shutdowns. And we already seen Canada pull out of the Spangler Cup. I'm supposed to be going to the World Juniors. Mark Spector today says Canada's pre-tournament game is supposed to change from Wednesday to Thursday against the Russians. Yet the crowd number, the attendance, just wait and see. Just wait and see. The event starts in 5 days, bro. Can people go or not? At least Ontario, with their stupid rules, said, yeah, nobody can come. Quebec, in their communist regime up there. Yeah, no, we're closing you can't come anywhere near us. Ontario, you can't have a glass of water at a sporting event because you're going to spread malaria to everybody and their cousin. Everybody's sick of it. And I get that. Everybody is. It's not just me. It's not just you. But when you have a platform to bitch, it's kind of fun. It's cathartic for me. And you might get sick of it, and I understand that. And I apologize because it's just a lot, I get that. COVID's it's a web of bullshit. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not Tucker Carlson. But it's a web of just never-ending bullshit where you got to jump through this hoop and this hoop to get to this hoop, and we don't know. And I wouldn't want to be a government official right now. So I can't crush them too much, but I can a little bit. And I'll keep you guys up to date if I'm going to Alberta, because so right now I feel about 30% confident that I'm going. It's going down every day. But I'll tell you what, if you want a podcast, this might be good content, because I will be completely out of my mind, and I'll do a live one if this happens in my hotel room. If somehow they don't let us know what the attendance is going to be, I fly out the 26th. My good buddy Sawyer, who's on the podcast last week. I'm only going because of him. He invited me, so thank you to him. But if we get out there, we're there. We're ready. We're getting ready to go, and then we hear, "Oh, sorry, it's only half capacity. You didn't make the cut." That would be the most livid podcast you'd ever heard from me. I think I'd have to go, because I think it would be fun content. I like to add a swear here and there to a podcast because I think it's authentic. I swear in my real life, I'd say frequently, but I'd say often enough. There'd be a few curse words. There'd be more spit and chicklets than to the point, that's for sure. But speaking of the World Juniors, it's gonna happen. The World Juniors are gonna be a go. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. Every country is over here now. I think it's just about attendance at this point. So I do feel confident in saying that there's going to be a tournament. So I do feel good about that. Obviously, like I just mentioned, Canada withdrew from the Spangler Cup, which is upsetting to me, because I'm a person that loves the Spangler Cup. I'm still going to watch it with the teams, but Canada's so well over the guys that can't play at the Olympics, can't make the NHL, go over there, and it's a really special environment. So I'm happy to see, I'm upset that they're not going, and I hope they can get back next season. But the World Juniors just announced, breaking news here, Team Canada has named defenseman Caden Gooley captain for the 2022 World Junior Hockey Championships, with forwards Jake Neighbors and Cole Perfetti serving as alternates. Not a big surprise. Caden Gooley is one of the few returnees on this team. First round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. Big, strong player. He's going to play a big role on this team. And just some information here. He's been practicing alongside Luca Cormier of New Brunswick. So it looks like Luca could be playing a big role in this tournament as well. But he's going to be, if they're going to win the gold medal, Caden Gooley and Owen Power on the back end are going to be the reason why. You look at Perfetti on offense. He was been playing for the Manitoba Moose in the AHL all season. He's a guy that needs to start. He had an okay tournament last year. It needs to be a big tournament for him. Jake Neighbors has played fantastic this year in his own right. You also have guys like Ken Johnson from Michigan, who just arrived at the event. Obviously, Owen Power, I'm excited to see him, last year's first rounder. You got Shane Wright, who's projected to go first round this year. And then you got the 16-year-old and Brian Berard's son, Brett, is actually going to be playing for the Americans, the former Montreal Canadian, Toronto Maple Leaf, New York Islander. So, but yeah, good selection by Canada. No surprise here. He's definitely the leader of the group. He's been there before. He's done all that. So good to see for Team Canada to make that announcement right now. Also some breaking news here. Not a huge surprise, but New York Giants have shut down quarterback Daniel Jones for the remainder of the season because of his neck injury. He hasn't played in a number of weeks, and Mike Glennon has been the starting quarterback for the Giants. And the New York Giants are really a pathetic football team. They have no offensive identity. They fired Jason Garrett. They're still terrible. They can't run the football effectively. Their wide receivers are pedestrian. Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard's been injured all year. Kenny Galladay's been inconsistent. And I look at this team, they're going to go through a major, complete overhaul. To me, Daniel Jones is not going to be back as the Giants quarterback. I think he's played his last game as a Giant. I don't think they're going to pick up his option. He'll be a free agent, and they're going to have to chew on the fact that they drafted him 6th overall. and it didn't work out. I expect Dave Gettleman to be fired. And if you're bringing in a new GM, I don't know why the hell you'd want Joe Judge as your head coach. I don't know what he's shown so far to prove that he is a head coach for that matter. But I don't, if you're going to fire one, you might as well fire the other, because Joe Judge, again, he's done nothing for me. He thinks he's Bill Belichick and he's won nothing in this league. So I would move on from Joe Judge as well. But he'll be gone. I expect Saquon Barkley to be gone from this team. And he's always injured. I think he'll want a fresh start, but it's never worked out. It took him second overall, and it's been a disaster. Always injured. I never liked his style. He's a home run back where he'll get a 67-yard run on one run, and then the rest of the game he'll have 10 carries for 20 yards. He's just not a guy that's consistent, down for down back that's going to give you productivity every single time. But, speaking of the Giants, this week on the podcast, I'm going to be playing a little game, and that game's going to be set or reset. And I'm going to go through the teams in the NFL and talk about if they are set at quarterback moving forward, or if they need a complete overhaul, if they need a reset at that position, and also dive into the, how they're approaching that team. So the Giants, I just touched on them, but there's a lot of teams that I'm going to go through where you're going to say, holy crap, they're not set with this guy at quarterback, are they? And we'll go through that. We'll go through it with the teams like this. We'll go through every team. Obviously, you got your easy ones with the Bucs, but you have a team like the Packers who could win the Super Bowl. Are they set at quarterback? Well, I'm sure they'd love to have Aaron Rodgers back, but does he want to return to the Green Bay Packers? That's still up in the air. That's still not determined. So, there's a lot to dive into there, a lot to be discussed. So that's going to happen this week. And obviously we'll talk about the year in review. We'll talk about some different things this week as we head into Christmas. NHL games that are happening, we'll talk about. I'll be talking with Seamus this week. We'll preview Ben Murray will be on later in the week. We'll preview week 16 in the NFL. It kicks off Thursday with the Titans and 49ers. So that should be fun. But yeah, some college bowl games this weekend. We watched some football, a lot of football and college basketball on Saturday. Hung out with Matt Wright, who's a frequent guest on the podcast. Again, college basketball on a Saturday. I loved it. Watched some BYU football. Bowl season is upon us. You got Old Dominion and Tulsa today. After this podcast, plan to throw that on for a while, and that's just the way it is. But this week, look at the sports calendar. You got 2 football games tomorrow, and 2 college football bowl games. Only 3 NHL games, a few scheduled NBA games at this point, but who knows if they'll stick by then. You have a bowl game Wednesday, Missouri Army. You got 2 bowl games on Thursday. You have one on Christmas Eve, which I've been stoked about, as I like to talk about. But the sports world in state of flux. There's no cross country games until the new year when it comes to the NHL. No Canadian team is playing a game this week. So ratings on Sportsnet TSN will be taking a major dive, and they got to hope that the World Juniors can start up so they can put some content on their networks. But tonight we got Browns against the Raiders. We got Vikings Bears in the game of the mothership following. And we'll touch on those games tomorrow. We'll touch on any other news in the sports world. We'll also preview Rams, Seahawks, and Eagles, Washington football team. We'll talk about different COVID updates, if Kyle Allen's going to be available, if Taylor Heineke's off the COVID list. So we'll give you some game and some player updates before kickoff tomorrow night. So we'll be back tomorrow. I'll be podcasting with Seamus tomorrow night as well about the 3rd and 4th last episodes of Breaking Bad. But as always, thanks for hanging out with me. Great chat today. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk soon.